Okay, I think we're ready for the intro.
Perfect. Muy buenas noches a todos. Good evening, everyone. We're going to get started in about a few seconds. We will be offering live interpretation in Spanish during this meeting. If you wish to hear the Spanish interpretation, please click on the interpretation button at the bottom right of your Zoom screen. You will see a globe icon. We will turn it on in a minute after these instructions. If you're joining us via the Zoom smartphone app, select your language by clicking More or the three dots in the bottom right corner of your screen. Select Language Interpretation, then choose Spanish, and then click Done. If you wish to hear only the interpreter and not the original speakers, be sure to click Mute Original Audio. Everyone must choose a language. Estamos ofreciendo interpretación en vivo al español durante esta reunión. Si desea escuchar la interpretación en español, haga clic en el botón de interpretación en la parte inferior derecha de la pantalla de Zoom. Verá un icono de globo terráqueo. Este se encenderá cuando terminemos estas instrucciones. Si nos está acompañando a través de la aplicación de Zoom para smartphone, seleccione su idioma haciendo clic en donde dice More o más o en los tres puntos en la esquina inferior derecha de la pantalla. Seleccione Language Interpretation o interpretación del idioma y después elija Spanish y haga clic donde dice Listo. Si desea escuchar solo al intérprete y no al presentador, asegúrese de hacer clic donde dice Mute Original Audio o silenciar el audio original. Debe de escoger su idioma. Back to you, Mónica or Brad.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. We have our education readings, our elementary reading specialist, Betsy Hall, and she will be presenting today on kinder and first grade beginning reading.
Okay, I guess that's me. Well, welcome, parents. I'm really glad that you're here. This is very strange for me. I'm used to doing this in person and giving you lots of things to touch and look at and play with. And so I hope you'll get some of the sense of that. Usually I would have met many of you and you would have been able to come on campus. I have a whole parent support center by the reading room. But unfortunately, things being what they are, that's not possible. So I'm hoping that this will be informational for you tonight. You can put questions into the chat, but I'm going to ask if it's not just a burning question, if we can wait until the end of the presentation, and then I can answer questions. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and hope it works. Okay, so this is supporting your beginning reader, K1. You may notice throughout here, there are many, many cat pictures. I have many cats and they may be participating tonight. So I like to put them into my slideshows. Hold on, it's not taking me to my next slide. There we go. So here's my welcome slide. And of course, I made this slideshow a year ago before I decided to let my hair go gray. So it doesn't exactly look like me anymore, but welcome. Here's my agenda for the next hour and 20 minutes or so. I want to go over a framework for literacy and understanding the reading process. I want to talk to you about phonics, about the regular sounds and spellings that your children are going to be exposed to and are going to need to learn. And I want to talk about sight words, which are irregular sounds and spellings, the importance of phonological awareness, especially for pre-K and K students. I'm going to discuss 3 types of early readers and how to choose what's an appropriate book for your child. I'm going to talk about some potential red flags. Should I be concerned? Here's one of my cats right now. And then questions. So let's start right away. We're going to jump in with the framework. To me, when I think about reading, this is how I organize my thinking about it, right? So above all else, students, in order to read, be motivated. They need to experience success and pleasure. It needs to be relevant to them. They need to know that there's a purpose for reading. For littles, for our Ks and 1s, that's not a problem. Most of our kiddos are really so motivated to learn to read. Motivation doesn't become an issue until later on, usually when kids are struggling or when they're teenagers and they don't want to do anything that we say. So, but above all, this has place motivation. And then you'll notice the framework is divided into two parts. We have the left-hand side here, which is the decoding, encoding, the reading kind of and spelling part, and then comprehension. I'm going to be talking tonight about decoding and encoding primarily. Comprehension is just as important, and that's the reason that we learn to read. There would be no point to it if we weren't reading to understand. For our kiddos who are pre-readers or beginning readers, they're not going to get much comprehension at this point out of the words on the text that they can read. Where comprehension is coming in is from you reading to them books with vocabulary, you're giving them background knowledge. It doesn't matter if you read to them in English or Spanish or German or whatever your home language is, you're really working on the comprehension side of the framework by reading aloud to them. They will get there where they are reading to learn and for comprehension, but not quite yet. Our beginning readers are really in the learn how to read side. So while you will be giving them academic language and vocabulary and these things by reading, here's what we're really going to focus on tonight. We're going to look at word recognition and spelling strategies. The other part of this is fluency. So we're going to talk about the stages that kids go through, print concepts, these are pre-readers, phonological awareness, which is the ability to hear and manipulate sounds. There's not print involved with that. It's an auditory skill. Ventaphonics, which is connecting the letter names to the sounds and being able to put that together, and sight words. And we want all of these things working smoothly so that kids develop authenticity and they can read fluently. When they get to the point where they can read fluently and their brain isn't fixated on sounding out every word, then they're really ready to start comprehending what they read. Okay, so we're going to be working over here on this side of the framework tonight. All right, so why is English so darn difficult? Right, it is really one of the most challenging languages to learn. Every group that came and conquered the British Isles over its history left some language and spelling behind. So the Normans, the Romans, the Vikings, everybody came and left their language and their spelling. And most of the words that we today say are sight words were these words that were left behind and are so difficult for us now because they're not regular spellings. This is important, I think, for our school in particular. 26% of English vocabulary is Germanic in origin, so from German. Nearly 30% is French, and another 30% is Latin. There are in English 26 letters, but 43, or depending upon sort of which theory you subscribe to, 44 sounds. So think about that. Our kids have to learn the names of 26 letters, and actually they have to learn what they look like uppercase and lowercase. So 26 times 2, really. And then there's 43 possible sounds. That is a lot for them to take in. Something else to know is that old ways of pronouncing letters, for example, WH, we have a million words with WH, what, when, where, why. It used to be pronounced like kind of a windy what, when, where, why. We don't do that anymore, but the spelling remains. So our kids have to learn to put that H in there. And then English is also full of crazy idioms like sit tight and hit the roof, which is a lot, especially if your child or if you're not a native English speaker. If you're learning English as a second or third language, that's something that makes it very complex to learn. There are some languages like, I believe, Finnish, which is considered a very transparent language, or Spanish, the Romance languages, which are much easier to learn because basically what you see is what you get. right? And it's by syllables, and you can really sound things out, and it's easier to learn. English is not like that. It takes about 7 years to become fully proficient in speaking English. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in and do some practicing with the sounds of English. You may be familiar with this chart, kinders especially. This is our zoophonics chart. This is something that we use in kinder and first grade to help our students attach the sound to the letter name. And there are as many different ways of doing this as there are companies and people who think this up. You can find charts with A for apple and A for ant, and here we have A for alligator. What's important is that whatever one that your child is using, that they are consistent with it. We just want to make sure that they make that connection. So we've got Allie alligator and Bubba bear and Katina cat, and there are movements that go along with this. If you aren't aware of this chart or of zoophonics, I encourage you to go onto the kindergarten teacher's website. There are all kinds of resources there, including videos that go over there's movements that go with every one of them. So there's Bubba bear and Katina cat and Dee Dee deer. And those are helpful for the students as well. I have assessed children. I've asked them to tell me the letter name or the sound, and they'll say Ellie, elephant, and then they can tell me, but their body remembers by doing the sound. Some of our kiddos, that's the way in for them, is by that physical movement. So that's part of why we use this program. I'm actually going to show you. Hope it comes up. Okay, so we're going to look at this common and regular spelling chart for our 43 sounds. I'll give you just a minute to kind of look at this. It's organized with consonants first, then digraphs, and then we're going to move on down into vowels. Now, if you were sitting in the room with me, I would be making you say this out loud. I'm going to encourage you from the safety of your home or your car or wherever you are to say these sounds out loud so that you can practice. It is important, if you're going to help your kiddo learn to read, that you know how to pronounce the sound correctly so that you can help them and guide them if they're not sure. The biggest thing to know about making the sounds is to not distort them. And by distortion, I mean not putting the schwa or the sound at the end. So we don't want to look at the letter B and say ba, or look at the letter C and say ka. Because if students do that, for example, if we were going to sound out cat and the student said ka, ta, and then tried to blend that together, they could struggle and say kata, which is not the word we're trying to get. We're trying to get cat. So it's really important when we make the sounds to be very clean and crisp with them. And if you get nothing else out of this tonight, if you get that and can remember just not to distort the sounds when you're saying them, that will be fantastic and very helpful to your child. So, all right, let's go through here. Here's our first consonant. The name of the letter is B. The sound is B. B. Not ba, but B. Right, next one, I'm going to pause just to give you a second to say it, and then I'll say it so you can kind of hear how you did. So we've got 3 ways to do this sound. It could be spelled by C, it could be spelled by K, or at the end of a word only, it could be spelled CK. The sound is K. K. Not ka, but K. Right, D. The sound is D, D, not da, D. All right, in English, the sound is, here's the letter F. It is also spelled by the digraph PH. The sound is, this is the same mouth position as this letter. This one is voice off, and this one will be voice on. Okay, and this is tricky between the English and the German. All right. This one is a tricky letter for the students. Say the name. So when you say G, what sound do you hear? J, right? So G does make the J sound. We'll talk about that when we get over here. But the sound that we teach kids is the hard G sound. G, that's Gordo gorilla in zoophonics. But this one can kind of trick kids. If your student looks at the letter G and says J, it may be because they're thinking, well, G, J. Most of our letters make the sound of their name, or their name is, the sound is included in their name, but not G. All right, this is a tricky one, only at the beginning. And the sound is really no sound at all. This is just a puff of air. Sometimes we call it the bad breath sound, like when you go, check your breath, or if you have glasses and you breathe on them. The tricky thing about H is that it takes on the sound of whatever vowel follows it. So happy, hit, hot, right? It just blends into that vowel sound. So the word starts with a puff of air, but right away you move into the vowel sound. All right. So now we get into J. J makes the J sound like we talked about. This is kind of a tricky one though. In English, it is also spelled D-G-E at the end of a word, like edge or judge or fudge. And it is spelled G-E-G-I and G-Y, like gentle, giant, and gymnastics. So we do get the J sound in there. Are there exceptions to this? Yes, of course there are. The word get, G-E-T, has the hard G. So there's always going to be an exception. Most often they're like at the end of a word, like page or stage. There's where the G really makes the J sound with the E after it. All right, this is L. L says L. And this is one that we can hold, which is important in beginning reading. We teach the ones that we can hold the sounds first because they're easier to blend, like this next one. Okay, the next one is And this is really one of the first sounds that kids start making when they start babbling, mama, mama, right? It's an easy sound to make. And so it's one of the first ones that we teach to kids. And it's good because we can hold it and blend. All right, moving on. N, also in English, spelled K-N. There is K-N in German. In German, the K is pronounced. So it's two separate sounds. In English, we kept the K, but we don't say it. All right, so this is a very nasal sound. And the sound is N. Try plugging your nose and saying it. Can't. We have to have the sound come through our nose. It's fun to have the kids do that. All right, moving on. Next letter is P. The sound is P. There's actually no vibration. It's just P. It's a puff of air. Pig. Try saying a word that starts with P. It's like H. It picks up the vowel sound. All right, Q, U. We teach the letter Q when we're teaching the name separately, but when we do sounds, the QU is never, ever apart. You will never have a word that just has Q. Now, you might think that it says qua, but if you really listen to words that start with the QU, it's more like coo. And so we teach the kids, if they say coo, or they get their mouth ready to say that, they're in the right position. Listen, quick, quiet, queen. I'm not saying qua, ick, qua, it, right? There's no in there. It's coo, quick, queen. Okay, next one. R and in English, WR says, be careful with this one. It's not ra, it's red, run. There's no at the end of it. All right, the letter S. Oh, and I meant to mention this up here. Well, sometimes when kids see the letter C, what sound do you think they want to say? The letter's name is C. They want to say S, and they're partially correct, right? Because S says S, but CE, CI, and CY, same pattern, EIY, EIY, turn the S, turn the hard C into the soft S sound. So race or center, city, cycle. Again, there's exceptions, but this is good to make students aware of. We have lots of words in English that end, especially if it ends with a C, it ends with an E. Think about dance or once, right? T, that's a nice crisp one. V, same position as the F, but turn your voice on. You can hold it, but it tickles. All right, W. This one is such a stinker. Say the name. What sound do you think kids say? D, of course, because it's W. So we have to say, nope. W doesn't say D. And it also doesn't say wa. So just like we said ku for QU, I want you to think about woo for W because it's the right mouth position. Water, Wednesday, wet instead of wa. It's not wa otter, right? So think about the woo. X is the only letter in English that actually has two sounds. It's the KS. I don't know why I do that. It's just like I have some sort of magical power. I don't know. But X says so K first and then S right after it. Now, this is only true at the end of a word. At the beginning of a word, X usually says Z, like Xerox or Xavier. However, when we're teaching kinders in first, we focus on X at the end and we teach words like fox and fix and box, where you can hear that sound. All right, here's another stinker. Say the name of this letter. Y. What sound do you think the kids are going to make? Right? It's obvious. They're going to say, like, nope, that belongs to this letter. This letter, the letter Y of all of the letters in English, is the most complicated because it acts as a consonant and as a vowel. It only acts as a consonant at the beginning of words, which is why we have this position here. So at the beginning of words, we want children to think about getting ready to say ye, like hear ye, hear ye. Yes, yummy, yucky. Rather than ya, it's ye. And we'll look later on here what other sounds Y makes. Y is just super tricky. And then last consonant here in English is Z, which says Z, also spelled in English at the end of a word with S. This is a regular spelling for S to make the Z sound. So as, has, was, glasses. There's S making the Z sound. All right, let's move on to the digraphs. Sometimes we'd like to call these the H brothers, except for this one. So SH, shh. I want you to actually do that. Put your hand in front of your mouth and make the sound. Shh. You should feel some air softly hitting your hand, but not a lot, right? Now, let's switch to this one. Put your hand up again, and now I want you to make the sound for CH, also spelled TCH. If you do it correctly, you should feel the air hitting your hand. Okay. For Spanish speakers, especially, it's difficult to distinguish these two. And so I have the kids do this. Shh. And for if you practice, pretend you're sneezing, chew, they can feel that better. Okay, so C or SH, shh, CH, and TCH, ch. WH, we don't say anymore. We spell it, but we just make the plain old ooh sound. What, when. Okay, TH makes two sounds. It's the one time I tell the kids it's okay to stick your tongue out at somebody because you have to put your tongue between your teeth in order to make this sound. Now, if your 5-year-old or 6-year-old or even early 7-year-old cannot make this sound yet, it's okay. This, along with R, is one of the later developing sounds, and it's hard for kids. And if they don't have their front teeth, it's hard for kids. But I want you to be aware of how to make this sound so that you can help them if they're struggling with it. Because when children don't have that right mouth position, it can become duh and dare and dees instead of the and there and these. So tongue is going to stick out. V means voiced. So we're going to turn our voice on and stick our tongue out and say, you should feel your throat vibrate. All right, now turn your voice off, like thin or thick, right? There's no vibration there. Tongue's got to come out. All right, NG, this is kind of a weird one. It's like in the back of our nose. Say song, hang. Feel how your tongue rises to kind of block the back of your throat. Ring. Can't do it with your nose closed. Ring. Can't do it, right? Your tongue has to be able to hit the roof of your mouth. And then PH, we already talked about that. All right. Inflectional endings. This is a first grade standard. In first grade, students need to be able to read words that end in ing. They need to be able to read words that end in ed when we put words into the past, like smiled or talked. Here's a fun thing. ED makes more than one sound. Of course it does, right? But there is a rhyme and a reason to it. So if a word ends in an unvoiced sound, so that's a soft sound, a sound that we don't turn our voice on for, like sh, ch, p, k, right? No vibration. The ED is going to say t. For example, pushed, kicked, jumped. Very often when students are learning this, they will spell it with a T, right? Before they learn that, nope, it's in the past, so it's an ED. They're going to spell it with a T because that's what you hear. If the ending sound of the word, of the verb, is voiced, your voice box buzzes, we say D. So rolled, planned, smiled. Okay? You can kind of feel that when you do it. If the word ends with either a T or a D, we add a little vowel sound and we say id. Wanted, started, landed. Because we can't say start or landed. We have to put a little vowel sound in there. Right? So that's why we've got those three sounds. Then we have this inflectional ending s and as, like glasses. All right, if you're still with me, let's move on to vowels. Okay, we're going to start with the short vowels, which is what this little line here means. It means it's not at the end of a syllable or a word, so it's going to make the short sound. Sure, and this is so important for you to know, right? This is crucial because the vowels are what make the words. You cannot have a word in English or Spanish or German without a vowel. All right, so short A says ah, ah. Think of alley, alligator. Short E says eh, eh. The animal is ellie, elephant. Short I, I, I. important to be very clear on the distinction between short E and short I, because they sound very similar. Short I is I. You kind of have to smile when you say short I. And that's any inchworm. Short O, you're going to kind of drop your jaw more. Ah. And this is a special one. So short U says what? This is the easiest sound of all. Sometimes we teach the kids, it's kind of like if somebody were to punch them gently in the stomach, they would say, kind of force that sound out. Now, here's the thing about English that's just, I think, kind of cool. Any of our other vowels can also make this sound. This is not going to be so important right now in kinder or in first, but as your students develop and mature, they're going to run into this all the time, because once they get into words with more than one syllable in English, the unaccented syllable can make the schwa sound. Doesn't matter how it's spelled. It says Think about the words again, around, about. Okay. That first letter is an A, but we say So that's just something for you to be aware of. Not that your kinders and first are going to do it right now, but it will come up later on. Okay, we call these R controlled or bossy R because the R changes the sound the vowel makes. So AR says R, just like the name of the letter R. ER, IR, and UR all make the same sound. It's just spelling differences. And students have to learn which spelling goes with which one. They all say her, bird, nurse. I'll say And OR says or. All right. Dropping down into the long vowels. So we spend all this time teaching our kinders and our first graders the short sounds. We just hit them with it until they got it. And they can read those short vowel words and we're like, yay, fantastic. Guess what? There's all these other sounds that these vowels can make. It's not just the short sounds. So we move into long. And how we start long vowels is by doing what we call finally, or magic E, or silent E, or bossy E. Different teachers call it different things. But the idea is that if there is a vowel, one consonant, and an E at the end, that E has the power to make the vowel say its name. So no longer is this A, it's A. And this is E, I, O, and U. And then here we just have some different spellings. You can spell the long A sound with either AI or AY. It's positional, depends on where it falls in the word. If it's at the end of a syllable, we spell it AY, or at the end of a word like play or ray. If it's in the middle, we spell it AI, like rain. Okay. EE and EA. So EE is easy. It does what it's supposed to do. It just says E. EA, on the other hand, is a stinker because almost 40% of the time, EA says eh. Think about head or feather or dead. Think about breathe and breath, both of which are spelled with EA. So EA is tricky for kids. And so when we teach it, you may have heard this little mnemonic. When two vowels go walking, the first one does the talking. That's useful for beginning information because it's true here. When A and I are together, A says its name. And when E and E are together, E says its name. And some of the time when E and A are together, E says its name. And it's true also for OA. We have to tell kids, though, that for EA, it's not always true. And so if the long sound, if the E sound doesn't sound right, they need to try the short sound. I has IGH, which is really tricky looking and complicated until they learn that that chunk goes together to say I. OA says O, but it's in the middle, not at the end. If we want to have an O sound at the end, we spell it O-W. We don't like to end words with vowels, except for E. So we'll cap a consonant on the end of it, right? Like the Y or the W here. All right. And then for long U, this all gets kind of muddy. We get into U's and oohs. So long U can say U as in cute, C-U-T-E. And this would be few. So say that so you can hear the U sound. Few. But then we get over into the ooh. So this would be a word like dude, D-U-D-E, right? Same pattern, but it's ooh, dude. And this would be new. So this starts to get complicated. Kinder, don't need to worry about this, not yet. First grade, yeah, this is going to be coming up, and then definitely moving into second and third. So this down here, just so you're aware, and we tell the kids, this is by itself because in order to be able to read polysyllabic words, words with 2 or more syllables, kids need to know that if the syllable ends on a vowel, it's long. So station, fever, silent, lotion, music. All of those had 2 syllables. The first syllable ended on a vowel and it was long. Okay. Again, not for kinder, just so you know, this is coming up. And then here we've got the oohs. This would be like super instead of music. Here we have like good. So right, boo, book, goo, good. This is positional. Oi, if it's in the middle. O-I in the middle, O-Y at the end. And that's the same pattern that you have here. A-I in the middle, O-I in the middle, A-Y at the end, O-Y at the end. And then here for the ow sound, O-U in the middle, O-W can usually at the end, or at least at the end of a syllable. And then here we have, this is the same pattern, just A-W and A-U, and it says the short O sound, which is aw, aw. All right, I know, right? Are you just done now after all these vowels? But I think it's really important that you are familiar with them and know how to say all of these sounds so that you can help your kiddos. All right, go back to this. Yay, we got through the sounds of English phonics. All right, so this is also something that we use. This is from SIPS, which is the program that we're using in kinder and first as our primary reading program. I'm trying to get this. Sorry, I'm just trying to move my picture out of the way. So here's a way to think about the short vowels. And of course it uses a cat because that's fun for the kids. And it's actually, this is helpful for them to remember. So where is the cat? The cat is at the chair, at. Where is the cat, or what is the cat touching? The cat is touching the edge of the chair. Where is the cat? The cat is now in the chair. I had one child, kindergartner, really argue with me yesterday that if it was in the chair, then the cat should literally be inside the chair. So that was pretty smart, but it's like, no, we're showing the cat sitting in the chair. Now the cat is on the chair. And in the last picture, the cat is under the chair. So this is something you can do with your students. And I think I have a way after this to share this slideshow with you so that you can have links to all of my slides and all of this. You can have access. So you can do this with the kids, and I do it in the classroom. I make the kids stand up and I say, okay, stand at at your chair, and they have to say at. Okay, now edge, and they have to put their little butts on the edge of the chair. Get in the chair. Of course, which one is their favorite? They get to stand carefully and safely on the chair. And then when we do I don't want them to put their whole body under the chair, but they can put their head, or they try to get under there. And so it's just kind of a fun way to help them get familiar with that. They get to move their bodies, and it kind of helps them remember. And I have like older kids who sometimes I can still see them saying, okay, edge of the chair. Okay, that's the sound, right? So it's just another way for them to learn these sounds. Hold on to them. Hold on here. The slides are not going. There we go. All right. This is the long vowel chart that we use for SIPs. And you can see this is what we were just talking about. Looks exactly the same. We just have some pictures as anchors. So cake, tree, kite, bone, and mule. All right, so let's talk about when all this comes up and where the kids are. So if you think about your own child or children, let's look at these distinct stages that our students go through. All right, so pre-K, preschool, beginning of kinder, we have what's called the print concepts level. So this is students, they are pre-alphabetic, right? They are not yet, they don't have all the letter names, they don't have that awareness. They might be able to write a few letters, but they are not yet bought into that system. So what's important for them to learn are things like the title of the book, the back of the book, illustrator, front and back covers that we read from left to right and top to bottom, right? All of these things that when you are reading out loud to them, they're sitting on your lap and you're reading, they're learning those things from you, right? And that's important pre-reading knowledge. They are also in this stage learning the alphabet letter names, both uppercase and lowercase. Uppercase is easier for students to learn and to recognize because they are all the same size. If you think about it, all uppercase letters fill the entire line space from top to bottom. Lowercase, on the other hand, some are tall, some are in the middle, and some drop down into the basement, right? So that's harder. So by this point in the year, your kinder should know almost all of the letter names. We'd love to be all, but if they're close, that's great. Both uppercase and lowercase, right? Once they've got that, we transition into really connecting the sounds. So once they've got the letter names, we move into the alphabetic level. Now they are learning the consonant sounds, the short vowel sounds, and they are working on putting those together. And this is a crucial piece of reading. And here's where that listening skill comes in. Students need to be able to hear am, and put that together into Sam, right? So that they're training their brain so that when they now are looking at the letters, they're having to say, okay, that's an S says S, that's an A says A, that's an M says That's a lot to hold on to, right? So they need to know that then that goes together into a word. So blending is crucial. Segmenting comes into play for spelling. So if I wanted to spell the word Sam, I have to say it in my head, Sam. Okay, what do I hear? S. What letter says? All right, that's S. And then I write it down, right? Sam's, Okay, what letter says A? That's A. Write it down. So that's where segmenting comes in. Once they can do that, we want them to be able to read and spell those CVC words and to read and spell some sight words. Now, we do start sight words in kinder. We really hold them accountable for the reading and the spelling of it. Here it says second half of kinder to first half of first grade. Here's really where they're working on this. If your student is in first grade now, they should be hopefully reading some CVC words. They've got some sight words. and they're going to be ready to move on. Now, one thing, let me just give a little caveat here. Because our school is German immersion, your kiddos are only getting half the amount of instruction that they would be getting if they were in a non-immersion school. So that's something to bear in mind when we're looking at this. And when you're looking at your child compared to maybe your neighbor's kids, our kiddos tend to run a little bit behind kids who are in English only schools because they are getting less English. They will get it. It all does come together. Our kiddos leave reading and writing fluently in English. But during these early stages, these early years, it's important to know that your child is learning 2 different phonics systems and different sight words and different vocabulary. And that's a lot to put together. So don't worry. Don't worry if Sally's child next door is reading 2-syllable words in 1st grade and your child is not yet. It's okay. It's okay. My kids went through Einstein. They learned to read and write, and the same thing. It took them a little bit longer, but they got it, and yours will too. So just thinking about these things, this is really what the state standards say. Okay, so this is by the first half of 1st grade. By the second half of 1st grade, we want to move into the spelling pattern level, which is where students start working on blends. So 2 consonants together, or 3, where we do the digraphs, where we start making that big jump into the long vowels, the final E, and then we go into those long vowel pairs or digraphs and the R control and all this other stuff I just made you go through. Now, is it okay if your child gets all the way through 1st grade and they're just kind of here? They're not solid on the final E yet. Yep. For our school, that's okay. That's okay. They will still work on this in 2nd grade. I'm working on it with 2nd graders right now. It's okay. Right. So just again, there's that little bit of lag we have to be aware of. So children work on this spelling pattern level until they're really strong on all the long vowels. And then they move into the final stage, which is polysyllabic morphemic. This can come as early for some kiddos as 1st grade. Other kiddos really don't get solid on this until the middle of 3rd grade. Right? Here's where we get into open and closed syllables and other syllable types and prefixes and suffixes and roots, right? This is 2nd and on until mastered. So this is the progression that your child will go through as they're learning to read, right? And if you think back to the framework that I showed you in the beginning, they got to get all this under their belt before their mind is really freed up to fully focus on comprehension. As long as they're still working on these things, a lot of their energy in their brain is going to still be on the decoding, on looking at those sounds and looking at those words and breaking them apart, right? So we really go from learning to read to reading to learn. And that really takes over 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, right? That's where that transition happens. Don't be frustrated if that's not happening yet for your student, because, right, this is a lot to learn. All right, well, how do we know what your students know? Let's see. All right, so hopefully, especially for 1st grade, hopefully you saw this at your student's first report card. For kinders, you may not have seen this yet, but it will be coming up. The first part of kinder is really just getting those letter names down. Now here's where we're moving into the sound. So this assessment is called the BST, which means Basic Phonics Skills Test. And up here, you can see here's all the letter sounds, and they're actually organized by the sounds that are easiest, the ones that you can hold. Those are called continuous sounds. And then the ones that are a little bit harder, the ones that stop, b, k, d, g. And then these dang tricky ones like H and W and Y and X and Q, right? So there's a total of 21 possible, and the teacher will score that. And then here we have the vowels. You will notice this is not in ABC order. Right? Sometimes kids learn things in ABC order and then they just are saying it. We want to know, do they know it in isolation? So that's why the vowels are not in ABC order either. All right, so after this, once they know at least 3 of the short vowel sounds and most of the consonants, at least 16 or so, we're going to see, well, how are they doing on blending? So first grade, definitely your students were assessed on this. Right? Here you can see these are easy CBC words. So it starts out with continuous, v, and then the next row has stop sounds. That's harder to blend. Ug, t, ip, right? This is easier. Mop, because you can hold it. So we do these 2 rows and then we move on into the digraphs. And then into the consonant blends. And then into the final E. And if you're thinking that this looks like this, you're exactly right. We literally just assess through this sequence, right? Consonant sounds, vowel sounds, blending, blends, digraphs, final E. It just literally moves down this scope and sequence. And you can see it goes all the way down here to polysyllabic words like particularly and tremendous. Okay, so now you know this is the basic phonics skills test. You always want to ask to see your child and see how they're doing on it. Right? We assess the kids on this a couple times a year. It's what we use to form groups. It's what I use to determine which students need to come to me for a little bit of extra support. It's just how we keep track of their progress. Okay, so we spent a lot of time, I have lost track of what time it is, 6:52. Okay, we spent a lot of time talking about the regular sounds. So now let's talk about what happens when the sounds are not regular. So words that contain sound spellings that have not been taught yet are one type of sight word. In kindergarten, that would be see, it would be like, it might be look, because we want kids to have those words so that we can do those easy sentences. I see the dog, I see the cat, I like to run, I like to swim. So we teach those words, even though they're decodable, we teach those as sight words in kindergarten because the patterns haven't been taught. But here's what most of the sight words are. They're irregular words that do not follow the sound spelling cards. For example, this word. If we were to sound this word out, we would say was, but we know that the word is pronounced was. This word should say own, like bone or phone. Instead, it says one. So let's take a look at these. We like to call these words stinkers because or rule breakers because they just don't follow the rule. So I'd like you to actually just take a minute, look at these words, say them to yourself, and then if you can, just jot down, put an R for regular, actually you can put a D for decodable and an I for irregular. So is it a word that can be sounded out, or is it a word that has to be learned as a sight word? Just a minute to think that through. All right, if you were with me, I would be having you either do a thumbs up for decodable, thumbs down for irregular or non-decodable. Can't see you out there. I just have to trust that you're participating. So let's go through these and then I'll tell you why this is so crucial that you know and that your students know. All right, so the word is like, and that one is decodable. Every letter does what it's supposed to. The E makes the I say I. It's a regular decodable word. Right? Next word, of, stinker, right? If I was going to write the word of the way it sounds, I would write it UV, not OF. So this one is really tricky for kids. All right, how about C? That's regular. EE, long E, everything's fine. How about play? Decodable. PL, pull, AY, A, it's good. Next one, should. You know, I'm wondering if I'm, sorry, these are actually here. I forgot that I'm fancier than I thought. All right, how about should? Irregular. Try saying it the way it's written. Showled, showled, should. Okay, so this the way we say it and the spelling do not match. How about the next one? How should we say it? It should rhyme with home, but it doesn't. It's come. And the last one. And that's decodable. You know, I realized when we went over the sound chart, I did not go over the fact that Y at the end of a one syllable word says I. I said Y is really tricky, and it can say A with AI with AY. Here's when it makes the long I sound. My, try, buy, cry, fly, shy. That's a regular sound for it. The other regular sound that Y makes at the end is E at the end of a two-syllable word. Funny, silly, happy. Y says E. I apologize for not going over that on the chart. Okay, so why do we need to know sight words? Why do students need to know sight words? So way back when we looked at the framework and we talked about automaticity, that means we need kids to be able to read, to look at a word and to not have to sound it out. We don't want students spending those precious seconds trying to decode a word that's not decodable. If you try to sound out should and you end up with showled, that's not helpful. So students need to recognize the words that are non-decodable and memorize them by sight. They just need to memorize them, right? And that can be flashcards, and we'll talk about some ways to practice that at home, but these are words they need to know by sight. Now, for our older kids, our second and third and on, we use something called the irregular words test. These are in order of frequency, the way that they appear in English. Like the is the most frequent one and of is next. And A here, because we tend to say I have a cat rather than I have a cat. So this is the assessment we use for second, third, and up. For kinder and first grade, we are actually using words from SIPS, which is our Systematic Instruction in Phonemic Awareness, Phonics, and Sight Word program, which hopefully you are familiar with. And so here are, you might have even seen these lists, they might have come home. These are the words that the kids are being taught in the stories that they're reading, and it's what they're being assessed on. All right, now I have to go back. Sorry, I have to go back to my slides. Okay. And again, you will have these links. Now, here's little words of wisdom. Reading is the best way to gain new words. The more students can read, the more they will be able to read. So this is why it's really important when you're sitting and reading with your little one, ask them to find the sight words that they can recognize. That's great. But when you are reading to them and you come to a word that is not a decodable word, you can say, this is a sight word. I just have to read this word. I just have to know it. I can't sound it out. It doesn't say what it's supposed to. Right. So there we go. All right, so let's talk about some fun ways to practice sight words. I'm all about the tactile and the touch. Okay, so you can, if you get a cookie sheet or a shoebox lid, something that has raised edges, you can do all kinds of things. You can put sand in it. You can put rice in it. You can put beans or lentils in it and make a really great writing surface for them so you can see the word, they can write it so they feel it in their fingers. They can spell it. You can write it and they can read it and then they can trace over it. That's just a fun way to practice. You can use shaving cream. So if you're feeling like you want to clean your counter, you spray shaving cream on your counter and go like this and let them play with it for, 30 seconds or so, because otherwise you won't get anything done. And then you say, okay, I'm going to say a letter. You write it. All right, my letter is B. They can do B. All right, I'm going to say a sound. You write the letter. Ch, ch. What two letters make ch? All right, I'm going to say a word. Was. Write the word was. If you're really brave, I encourage you to use chocolate pudding. Now, I might put that on a tray or on a plate, but they'll have a great time writing in it, and then they can lick it up when they're done. So there's a fun way, and that's great, especially if you've got a reluctant student, or they're just like they're over the flashcards and you're stuck. Try pudding. Sidewalk practice great. So you can write all over the sidewalk, and they can practice the words. And Post-its are fabulous. Kids love Post-its so much. And you can, especially if you've got a couple of words that your kiddo is stuck on, if you write that word on 5 Post-its and stick it up around the house and say, all right, you're going to go on a Post-it hunt. And they have to run around, and when they find a word, they can't take it down until they read it. And they can collect it, and then they have to go find the next one. If you have a space on your refrigerator or somewhere that you don't mind putting like kind of an empty frame on the wall, you can have the wall of glory or of fame or of success or whatever you want to call it. And every time they master a word, they get to stick that Post-it up there. It's like, yay, you didn't know said, but now you do. You can, this came to me from a parent. One parent with her child put the Post-it on the bathroom door, on the back of the toilet seat, on the refrigerator door, on the pantry door, and the child could not use the bathroom or go into the fridge until they could read that word. They learned it really fast. So you can, there's all kinds of ideas on here. Again, I will pass this on to you, but you can hang words and race across the room. You can put sight words down on the floor and they have to step on them and read them. You can make a bingo board with sight words. You can make a word search puzzle. You can play Go Fish. You can do tic-tac-toe. Tape words up on the ceiling. This is a great one. Tape words up on the ceiling and then get a flashlight. And they have to read the words they shine the flashlight on. Make the words using Play-Doh. You can get alphabet pasta. You can get alphabet cookies. You can get alphabet cookie cutters. And they can cut the letters out and do that. Be creative. And actually, some of these things you can do, like when my kids were little, I would give them the Play-Doh and the cookie cutters and that, and they'd be working on that while I was cooking dinner. So it was a way for me to kind of participate with them and still get what I needed to get done. And they got the practice in. All right, so let's talk about how to practice sounds. Here are some things that you can do. I actually brought one of these in to show you. These are fancy pants, but you don't need fancy pants tubs. You can use a yogurt container or a cottage cheese container. These contain, here I've got pictures of them, but these contain objects that start with whatever the letter is. So this was their M. You can see an uppercase and a lowercase. And here's a man and a mug and a motorcycle and a mop and a monkey. This is really fun for the kids to try to create their own. So if your child is really struggling to distinguish, maybe the W and the Y are really giving them difficulty. So you can make the tub and put the letter on, and you can go through some magazines and see if you can find pictures. You can go through the junk drawer and see if you can find something in there that starts with that letter. Encourage them to participate. They can kind of they can go around their bedroom on a scavenger hunt and try to find something that makes that sound. You could use a shoebox or a Kleenex box. Be creative, but this is something the kids really love, and I think it's like such a great thing to get to play with. The sound tubs, you can do that at home. I find where this is. I meant to bring it and actually show you, but this is a whisper phone. Whisper phones are like magic. This, as you can see, is a short piece of PVC pipe and 2 elbows. But what's so cool about it is when the kids hold it up to their ear and their mouth and they whisper, they can hear themselves. And this works up until like 4th grade. Honestly, they love to hear themselves in this. And so if you have a child who's just really not wanting to practice their reading out loud, make them a whisper phone and they will read because they want to hear it. So this is something you can do to have them practice their sounds or have them practice their sight words. And I think it can be for like less than $1 if you go to Home Depot and just get the parts. So those are some fun things that you can do to practice. If you feel like making the commitment to getting magnetic letters, and I encourage it, I think it's a great thing. I'm really going to recommend that you just go the extra distance and find a set where the consonants are one color and the vowels are another. And why this is so important is that, remember I said earlier, students really have to learn that every word or syllable in English has a vowel sound. Can't do it without. So when kids are starting to write and they're spelling the word man and they spell it MN, it's like, something's missing in there. You don't have that vowel sound. So that's why, when you're green here, that's why if the letters are red, then they can't build a word without a red letter. So there is a link. These you can find on Amazon. I think they're not cheap. I think they're about $22. But they are a great investment, especially if you have more than one kiddo. They're a great help for practicing spelling words and really giving them a fun way to manipulate these and manipulate sounds and work on this skill. So again, I'm just going to encourage, if you do decide to make the investment in a set of magnetic letters, it is worth the effort finding some that are both have the vowels one color and the consonants another. All right, so let's talk quickly about phonological awareness. I talked about it a little, but what is it? It is the ability to hear and manipulate sounds. And here's all of the things that it is. So it is the ability to blend syllables and segment them. And this is usually, we start actually with compound words. So we'll say cow, boy. What's the word? Cowboy. Cup, cake. What's the word? Cupcake. That's blending. When we do segmenting, we'll say, all right, here's my word, pancake. Pancake. And then we're going to break it apart. So we start there, and then we move on into syllables. So I was doing this today with the kindergartners that I see, and when we break them, we like to make them explode. So I was saying, right, I'm going to tell you a word, and then you're going to break it apart and explode. So the word is princess, princess, and we explode it, right? Just a fun way for them to get the practice in. And now we've moved from breaking apart compound words to now we're breaking apart syllables. The next thing we're going to go down into is onset and rhyme. What that means is the beginning consonants and then the vowel, the ending vowel chunk. So think about word families: at, app, in. So the onset, if I say k, that's the onset. At is the rhyme. B, at, at. I've broken the words cat, bat, mat into onset and rhyme. So we can blend it. All right, I'm going to say a word slowly. I want you to tell me the word. At, what's my word? Og, what's my word? This is something you can actually do when you're in the car with your child. You can play these kinds of games where you break words apart by saying them slowly, and the kid has to tell you what the word is. Or you can say the word and have them try to break it apart. Another thing to work on is, so this is phoneme isolation. Phoneme just means sound. It's the smallest unit, it's a sound. So when I do this with the students, I say a word, I have them repeat the word, and then I say, now tell me the first sound. So man, they would say man. First sound, This is difficult. Once they are able to just tell me the first sound, then we go on to the ending sound. So if I say man, and I have them repeat it, man, say, what's the last sound that came out of your mouth? Man. Sometimes they have to do it a couple of times to hear that sound. Something else that you can play with them. Once they get good at that and you want to be tricky, ask them to identify the sound in the middle. All right, I'm going to say a word. You tell me the middle sound. Fun. They would say, Right. The other thing really that's important is to do rhyming. This is an important pre-reading skill, the ability to hear and determine whether something rhymes or not. The ability to produce a rhyme, right, to recognize a rhyme is really very helpful moving into these onset and rhyme, moving into those word families. There isn't as much research to support doing rhyming, but it's been my personal experience, and I've been teaching for 30 years now, that most of the students that come and work with me in Learning Lab struggle with rhyming. They really have a hard time hearing whether or not things rhyme. If you yourself struggled to learn to read, it might be interesting to think back and see, can you rhyme, right? Not everyone can. It's an important skill for reading. So you can have rhyming games. You can say two words and say, tell me if these rhyme or not. Fat cat. Tell me if these rhyme or not. Fat dog. That doesn't rhyme. Pan, man. Pig, wig. Duck, day. That doesn't rhyme, right? So you're giving them 2 words or 3 words and then asking them to tell you if it rhymes or not. Once they're good at that, the next step would be asking them to produce an additional rhyme. So you might say 2 or 3 words. All right, I'm going to say a couple of words that rhyme. I want you to tell me one more. Fat, cat, mat. Tell me what rhymes. Sometimes, especially when we're starting and this is hard for them, I might give them a clue. What do you put on your head that rhymes with fat and cat and mat? Hat. Right? So if they need a clue, give them a clue. But again, this is something you can do with your child that will really help them. Nursery rhymes, rhyming songs, reading rhyming stories, and kids love rhyming stories. As part of your read aloud with them is great. And if you have little ones, pre-K, preschool, toddlers, never too soon to start with that, to start with the rhyming. Okay. And again, this is so important for kids and being able to then apply this skill that they have developed into blending letters into words and segmenting the words into sounds. We're giving them this practice before they have made the letter sound connection. We continue to practice it until they've got it mastered. All right, so here looking at here's this continuation or continuum of skills. The easiest thing to work on is rhyming. Then we have some last sound and blending, which leads to reading, segmenting, which is more difficult, leads to spelling. The most difficult thing to do is manipulation. This is really kind of the highest level where I might say, all right, I'm going to say a word. I want you to repeat the word and then change the beginning sound. So say fat, change the beginning sound to b. What's the word? That. You can see it ties into rhyming, but they won't be able to do this if they aren't first skilled in this. All right, how can you support this at home? Sing rhyming songs, read rhyming stories, listen to music and clap to the beat. That actually really helps. Clap out the syllables and names and words so you can clap their name, right? Oliver, Olivia. You can go around the house clapping things, clap everyone's name. You can play language games. It's time for ch. What time is it? And there's a link here to another document that's got all kinds of ideas for you. I'm going to just make sure I'm keeping track of the time. Okay. Now, what should my beginning reader read? This is really kind of a tricky question because there are, again, as many leveling systems as there are book publishers. All right. So before your child knows all of their letters and sounds, predictable books are a good place to start. So these are pattern books. They use picture clues. They're repetitive. So here you can see an example. I see a cow. I see a pig. I see a duck. I see a horse. They will pump. They will jump. They will shop. Right? You've got sight words and then repetition. They may not be able yet to sound out pump or jump, but they can look at the picture and figure it out. Okay. A lot of very early picture books are these like, I see a green leaf. I see a red leaf. I see a blue leaf. These are great for a short time. They're good for practicing sight words. However, once your child has got some of those short vowels and those consonant sounds, they're ready to read decodable texts. Almost all of the words should be able to be sounded out. Now, is this great literature? No, it's not. Sometimes it's ridiculously stupid. I mean, it's just really stilted and kind of awkward and not very fun. And there's a lot of fat cats sitting on mats. So, okay, because hopefully your child won't need to read a lot of these books, right? As they're gaining mastery over these sounds and the blending, they can move through into things that are more interesting. But this is an absolutely necessary stage. Jean Chall, who's a well-known reading researcher, called it the grunting and groaning stage, because they're grunting at that, and you're groaning because it is painful to sit and listen to them read a whole thing like this. However, like I said, we need to do it. Pour yourself a glass of wine if you need to and get through it, because this is so crucial for them. And your child, especially in first grade, should be bringing home books like this. So here's a simple example, right? The bat and a fat rat sat on a cat. The cat sat on a mat. The fat cat sat on a mat. Here's a more complicated one on the other side. Bob sat on the sled. He slid down a hill. So you can see there's some blends are in there. We've got SL, ST, and SP. So start with predictable books. That's a great place to start, but move into decodable as soon as possible. We really want them to buy into this. We have to convince them that this is the best strategy, sounding words out. And there are kids, they want to keep guessing because it's easy or easier, right? And you know, really little ones, you've seen them. They open up the book. They might even have the book like this, upside down. And they're just reading. Well, they're looking at the picture and they're telling a story. Oh, that's great. That's a great place to start. But that's not actually really reading. And so we got to get them away from guessing and into looking at every word and every letter and making the sounds, right? And putting it together. That's what's crucial. All right. So once they have mastered AYEE, and they've got at least 30 sight words, they're ready to start letting them go. And we can move into the I Can Read level 1 and level 2 books. And you might have seen, and I'm actually, let's see if I can flip to my DocuCam and I can show you some examples. Oh, here, I actually wanted to share. I'm going to try this. Let's hope it works. All right, so here's an example of a decodable book that you can actually find for your student if you wanted to have something to practice at home. Hopefully you're familiar with Starfall, the Starfall website. If you're not, your teacher's website should have the link, and we actually, as a school, have access to all of the activities and things have complete access. So there's also these books, and this is completely decodable. Here's a site. Well, they're practicing in this story. Eye, right? Even the Tin Man looks like an eye. So the ball hits the mitt. It's scintillating stories. However, this is great practice. This is also by Starfall. They have expanded and they now to get into chapter books. So Zach the Rat is the short A character. And here's chapter 1. And you can see this looks like a big kid book. There's more. Totally decodable, right? We've got sight words like says and sight words like down, but pass and stack and trash and camp, all decodable. So those are some that you can get that I wanted to show you. Here's another one that you may be familiar with. These are the
Betsy,
Bob.
We
Yes.
can't actually see the books.
Oh, you can't? I'm so sorry. I wonder why. Okay, thank you so much for telling me. All right, let me just shrink this then. I'm not sure why it's not being shared. Let me try this. How about now? Thank you. I'm
Yes.
so sorry. I didn't know that. Okay, well, let me just jump back then.
Yes, that works.
Here's Starfall. Here's what this looks like. Very simple. Zach has a big ball. Okay, great for practice. Here's what their chapter books look like. You can see there's more text, fully graphic, which the kids like. This is another thing that you can order from Starfall. You can go online and they're actually quite inexpensive if you wanted to order the books yourself. I have them in the Learning Center, and if you want, you send me an email and I can check some out to you. Here's another easily available decodable series. These are the Bob books. You can get them from Scholastic if your teacher does the book order. You can also buy them at Costco, and they're not very expensive. And they are, again, extremely scintillating stories. Mitt did not nap. Sit, Dot. Not high art, however, they serve the purpose. Lots of practice. Kids at this stage need lots of practice. Okay, here is another series. Once the kids are ready to read more independently, these Acorn books are great for practicing. You have to have final E to be able to read. Do you like my bike? Written in a graphic novel format, not too much text, great for practice. These are written, they say, at a first grade reading level. They're also fine for second grade, kids who are still learning this. And you can see you do have to know final E, you have to know AI, but these are easily available. I want to show you something though to kind of watch out for. Now, if you look at this, it says beginning reading. You have a kindergartner or maybe a first grader and you, perfect, level 1, beginning reading. Got it. Let's look at this. Let me see if I can find a good page. Oh, here. Would your beginning first grader be able to read all of the words on this page? Look at everything that's in here. We have later, 2-syllable, long A. How about memorize? Harder, 2 different R controls. Okay. Giggle, that has the GLE consonant, right? Syllable ending. So Fancy Nancy, how about splendid or practice? Fancy Nancy is great to read out loud to your beginning reader because it's full of fancy words and great vocabulary, and I am all for that. But to expect a beginning reader to be able to read this book, I don't think that's reasonable. And so when you go to Target or the library or Costco, wherever you go and you want to pick up a book for your child, don't just look at this. You need to actually open it up and look inside and see what kinds of patterns, what kinds of phonics your child is going to need to be able to decode if you're going to expect them to read it on their own. Here was another one. So I can read books. I can read level 2 books and I can read level 3 books. Those are good once they become independent. Once they're got those long vowels and they're feeling much more confident with that, they can do those. Like here's a good example. This is 3 Up a Tree. It says level 3. Lolly was up a tree in a flash. Now tell us a story, said Sam, and make it good, said Spider. Sit down, said Lolly, and listen to this. This is great for a strong first grade reader or a second grade reader who's got those things under control. Totally appropriate. Okay, so it actually says like transitional reader. That's great. Just beware of these ones that say 1 beginning reader. Okay, sorry, now let me stop sharing and go back to my, there we go. Can you, wait, I'm afraid you can't see this because now I went to the wrong thing. Hold on. Now just seeing us, right? Let's share screen. There we go. Are we back? Can you see my screen? Okay. Okay. And here, this was going through Fancy Nancy. So things to be concerned about for your child. Here are some common signs of a potential reading disability. Problems with understanding what is read to them. Lack of awareness of phonemes, the sounds that make up words, including a difficulty with blending the sounds to make words. So if you're doing those activities, those phonemic awareness activities, and your child is struggling, that's something to maybe let your teacher know about or to let me know about. Difficulty with spelling correctly. Okay, not so much for first grade or for kinder because they're still learning, but when children get older, if they're still really struggling to spell, that is a potential concern. Difficulty with the sequence or order of letters in words. So if they say cat and they spell it ATC, that would be a problem. That would be something to kind of watch out for and maybe talk to the teacher about. Trouble rhyming words. And again, I said, for me, a lot of the kids that I end up working with do have some difficulty in rhyming. Difficulty in pronouncing words. Difficulty, delay in speaking. Now, it is true that children who are delayed in their speech, who are late talkers, or who need speech support services, it's very common for them to struggle more to learn to read. Not always, and it doesn't mean that they won't do it, but it does mean it's something that we watch out for, right? And that's something that's actually good to let your child's teacher know. If your child was a late bloomer in terms of talking, that's good information for us. Delay in speaking as compared to most peers. If your child struggles to learn the alphabet, the numbers, the days of the week, colors, shapes, other really kind of basic stuff, if they really struggle to hold on to that, to learn it and to remember it, that could be a potential sign of a reading disability. And then difficulty understanding subtleties of language, right? If they don't understand jokes or slang, they have kind of a hard time following along. All of those could be potential difficulties. I'm going to give you one other one too. If you struggled with learning to read, or your spouse struggled with learning to read, or there are learning difficulties in family tree, there is a chance that your child may also have inherited that. Unfortunately, if you're a fabulous reader, that's not heritable. You cannot pass that on to your child. But if you struggled, there is the possibility that you've passed that on to your child, and that's really important to let us know. So then we can remediate, right? If we know that, then we can get right in there and work with them. Here's a list of resources that will be available, and That's it. And I think I made it just to 7:30. Look at that, on the dot. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing and just go to this screen and see I have, okay. Okay, so I'm looking, I can see it, just a couple of comments. If you, I guess unfortunately I can't actually hear you, but if you want to drop something into the chat, if you have questions, just kind of a few last words. Unfortunately, you can't come on campus and visit me, but if you have questions or concern about your child, please feel free to reach out to me via email. You can find me on the school's website. It's also just B, my last name Hall, bhall@aeacs.org. I would be happy to talk with you or set up a Zoom. Okay, good. Someone is saying, yes, we have a few level 1 books that say they're good for kindergartners. Yes, so bad. That's not about your kindergartner. That's about those books. That's about the publisher not knowing what a level 1 book is. Anybody else? Any other questions or comments? No? You're very welcome. I am so happy to go through this. You could probably tell I am totally a word nerd. I love stuff. I'm fascinated by it. I specialize in dyslexia and in learning about dyslexia and working with students. And I'm happy to be a resource in any way that you need. And good, I'm glad people are finding this helpful. Don't panic about the phonics. You can do it. I have total faith. You can do it. Okay, I guess if there's nothing else, Monica or Brad, is there anything else we need to do other than say goodbye?
No, that is on. I have been monitoring the question and answer box, and there isn't anything in there. Somebody just asked about the slides. Everything will be available on the AEA website under Parent Universities.
Okay, I sent the presentation to you already, correct?
You can send it to me or to Brad.
Okay, so I will do that and that will be available.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you so much for spending your time learning about reading.
All right, bye.
Bye.